from the registration standpoint, hopefully we'll have a little bit of time. I'm going to kick back to here and just talk about test tickets real quick. And instead of going through the slides, I'm going to just walk us through the system and show you where you would access test tickets that you would need. We did talk about for the students who tested at home and you needed to get credentials, you do have the ability to download the reports and online testing reports. But traditionally, and particularly for summative, this is where you navigate to access the students' test tickets. So we're going to go to the Online Testing Manage tab. And as always, we need to select our specific administration. We're going to go ahead and pick our interim fall. And we'll go ahead and pick math and 5th grade. And this is my district here, and go ahead and click search. Now I put in a district as my organization. If it's a CTC, they would be limited to only entering their campus, and they would see the same information there. It would just be at the campus level. Now, in this particular case, I've entered as a district, and testing has already started. So I get a summary or dashboard that identifies how many test students still have a test and ready test status, how many are in alerts, which basically identifies a student has started a test but not submitted it, and has subsequently logged out before submitting it. So it's kind of sitting out there, but it's not necessarily completed. And then those number of students that actually submitted. And then if we had any currently testing in progress at this point in time, we would see the number there. Below that, since I entered a district information in my organization, I'm going to see all of my campuses down here. Now, in this case, I only have one campus. If my district had multiple campuses with students that were testing or registered to test at those campuses, I would have a line for each one of those campuses, and then could drill down to that specific campus, any of those specific campuses, by clicking on the view icon in the actions column. As a CTC, this is the level you would enter for your own particular campus, right? So now I'm at a campus level organization of my elementary school, and I can see same similar view, but below my dashboard here, I have all of my various groups that I've set up. So if you were setting them up by teacher, you would have, and you use teachers' names, you might have, Mr. Smith, a Mrs. Jones, and have a different group for each one of those. And the reason, as I mentioned earlier, that this makes it convenient for you when you're just from a logistics standpoint, is that here I've got my overall information about where students are across all of the groups that I see at this, that have been created at this campus. But if I wanted to just monitor a particular group, and let's just say I wanted to print out test tickets for this particular group here, I can drill down, and now I'm only looking at those 12 students that are in that specific group, and I can monitor their progress but within that specific group. Now, if I scroll over to the right again, I'm going to have some general information about which PMPs are set up. This should always be verified ahead of time if possible. And then I can print out individual test tickets here for any of these students. So if I just needed this one particular test ticket, I can print it out. And again, that test ticket will identify, some base information. And as I mentioned, if you're going to distribute this out, be mindful that it does contain some personally identifiable information about the students. So if you're going to share these test tickets and send them home in any electronic format, try to ensure that they're either encrypted or secured behind some firewall, or that only the particular people that are allowed to access them have access to. In this case, if you didn't want to print them off just an individual test ticket, but would like to print off multiple test tickets, you have this print all test tickets option here. You also have the ability just to print selected ones off, okay? And then as you select individual ones, that option will apply. I'm going to go ahead and print them all off. We're just going to assume that this is like a batch for a teacher, and you're going to hand them out to your teacher and say, here are the kids that we've got registered for you. When you've got them batched together in a group and you print them off as a group, you will get this roster, not just the test ticket, but a roster that identifies all the tickets that are included in there. And then below that, the individual test tickets for each of those students. We did mention, let me go back to a different group real quick. Sorry if I'm making everyone dizzy real quick. We're going to go back and view all students. And so now we were looking at just one particular group, right? Now, in this situation, I can see that this student has started the test, but has not completed it or submitted it, and they're not currently logged into it. And the test ticket's still there. So if they needed it, that's fine. And the same test ticket that they had before will work. But if they lost it and you need to print off a new one, that will be available to you. We also have, I'm going to take a look at our submitted students. You can click on any of these circles to just drill down and only see the group of students that fit into that particular status category. So now I am looking at just the 21 students that have submitted their test. And if I scroll over, you'll see that I no longer have my test ticket available to me. I can see which attempt they're in, but I don't have a test ticket because the kids already submitted that test. This icon here is to go view that student's report in the online reporting suite, which we'll be having a webinar next week, which will talk about the details about the online reporting suite. But what I do want to show you here is if you wanted to set up a second attempt or a subsequent attempt for any of these students that have already submitted, you can navigate to their profile, which we've talked about a few times throughout this webinar, which is typically access to Students View and Edit. Here's their demographic information. You could update this manually, as I said, even if the student's already started testing if you needed to. And now I see this icon here. Process for creating a second attempt is as simple as clicking on it, hitting continue, and I'll see it's no longer available to me. I can see that now this student is registered for the second attempt. And if I navigate over back to the Manage Online Testing page, it'll take me to this student-specific report or specific login, and now I have a test ticket to print off. The test ticket data or information, the login information on this test ticket for a reattempt will be the exact same login credential information that was provided on the prior attempt. So you don't need to print out this ticket again if that student already has their credentials from their first attempt. So the ticket will remain the same. The only time a test ticket's credentials will change is if you did change a test language, let's say from English to Spanish, or you changed a test form, and specifically, or the PMPs, specifically if you went from refreshable Braille to a non-refreshable Braille online test. But those are the only two situations where you should expect to see the test ticket actually change. And actually in both of those instances, if a student has already started testing, like I mentioned earlier, you would not be able to change the language. And so you really would have to call a support center and they'd have to reset the test and then the student would start from scratch, but you would get a new test ticket in that instance. Or if you change the PNP where you went from a non-Braille test to a Braille test, or vice versa. Again, those are about interim test tickets. This is just some general information, which I've kind of briefly discussed, but just re-emphasizing the fact that you do want to test out or verify the PNPs ahead of time, that information is contained in the system, it's contained on those test tickets, so that while you can go make a change of PNPs after a student started testing, again, you're gonna have to do it manually, but you can go in the system, and let's say a student needed text-to-speech and it wasn't applied when they first logged into the test, you can return back to their profile, make that change, and then navigate back. And again, that test ticket will be the same in that instance, or the credentials, because it wasn't switched, either a language test switch or Braille to a non-Braille online test switch. And then these are just the instructions, which I just showed you how to do. So as you can see, it's very straightforward, printing test tickets, and all this information is there. And